Okay guys, let's talk race. We're going to talk about the race question today. Article of the week. We have done the annotations. We've highlighted the central idea for each section. We have done the summary, so make sure your summary is in the right spot. If not, fix the question, or start paying a little bit closer attention. You need to pay attention to the details and follow along that way. So what we're going to do first is you need your yellow highlighter marker pen. We're going to highlight evidence first that we could support the questions. The question is right here. How are the three types of failure different? So what we have to do with our yellow is highlight any evidence that explains how they're different. And the way you explain how they're different is you have to explain a little bit about it so that you can make the connection with your elaboration that's different from the previous ones. And I think I have a very creative idea for you to do that. So this time I want you to think of elaboration setting up the quote so that we're always staying with the answer, and that kind of sets it up. And remember, your evidence is a quote and it has to be in a complete sentence, and your evidence has to be cited correctly. So that's really, really, really important. And I know some of you don't like it, but you only don't like it because it hasn't gone well for you. So we're going to do a couple of these together, and then you should be getting the hang of it. So that's the idea. So with your yellow marker pen, I want you to go to the actual article. And what we have to do is explain the three different types of failure. And when we explain it, it has to sound like each one is different. So we're going to jump down to the preventable failure, and I want you to jump to paragraph 6. Paragraph 6 has a sentence that says, feeling bad. See, feeling bad. I'm going to keep going. Feeling bad about yourself after such a failure is reasonable and often necessary because the error is usually the result of laziness, skip the orange, or a reluctance, skip the orange, to follow instructions. So that's going to be our first piece of evidence. So it's yellow, not green. Okay? Now our second piece of evidence that we're going to use is in paragraph 10. Paragraph 10. So when we talk about complex failures, it starts right at the beginning of paragraph 10. Complex failures can also be understood as unavoidable failures, which makes it difficult to assign responsibility for them. So we're just going to stop right there because we don't need, we're already saying she said that. We don't need that other part of that. And last but not least, we need to talk about an intellectual failure. So in paragraph 12, it's way down here. Often these failures occur when we're working in areas which we lack expertise or in areas that are uncharted in a broad industry-wide sense. So I hope you can see the difference of that yellow. So those are going to be my three pieces of evidence. So now all I have to do is write a really great race answer. So here we go. 8-9, you already have your restatement started. Thanks, Ted. I just got to find my paper. Okay, so here we go. So I'm on the race. Hopefully you are too. I need to restate. I'm going to start with a capital T. You have to pay attention to the details. So capital T. The three types of failures. And all I've done is I took part of the question and I started a topic sentence. Are different. Because. Now that is your restatement. So I'm going to go ahead and go over here to the restate. Now I need to answer how they're different, and it's because they're very distinct. Because each type is distinct. We can see that's a D. I just boo-booed it. So there we've answered it, and we provided some punctuation. So make sure you get that down. That's your first sentence. Okay, so I need a transition word. I'm going to start just with to begin. So I have to begin. So I'm going to cross off the transition word. Notice it's all in order. So this isn't like hard. So far, it's not hard. The hardest part is finding evidence that supports the actual answer and then elaborating. But elaborating is not really hard. You have to know the article, and we've read it through quite a few times now. So to begin, comma. The author of this article, her name is Leah Fessler. So I'm just going to call her Fessler. And I'm going to spell it correctly, F-E-S-S-L-E-R. So I'm just going to say the author's name. So to begin, Fessler. And I'm going to start with an elaboration first. Described. Preventable failures as those situations. So I have to use my own words, because in elaboration, if I take words from the actual article and I don't put quotes around it, I've just plagiarized. And when you plagiarize in high school and college, you get kicked out. So we're going to just take that information and we're going to put a little spin on it in our own words. So to begin, Fessler described preventable failures as those situations where you goofed up. So I just described what they are. So you goofed up, in my own words. Now I need evidence. So I've elaborated. So I'm done with that part. Now I need to say, I'm going to take that first yellow from paragraph 6. So I'm going to say, in paragraph 6, so what I just did when I said in paragraph 6 is I've cited correctly. So I'm going to cross that out, cited correctly. Now I need the quote. In paragraph 6, she said, because I have to have the quote in a sentence, otherwise nobody's going to read my work. She said, comma. Now I'm going to start the quote, so it looks like this. Feeling bad about yourself after such a failure is reasonable, comma, and often necessary, comma, because the error is usually the result of laziness, comma, entitlement, comma, or a reluctance to follow instructions. Period. End the quote. So you got to make sure you end the quote, otherwise you did not cite it correctly. So there we have, I just finished my first piece of evidence. Now, you can freeze if you need to. Now we're going to do the second one. And I'm going to use a transition because I want to get a little more sophisticated. We've been doing this for a while. I'm going to use next. The author, her name is Fessler, capital F-E-S-S-L-E-R. And I'm going to keep using different verbs. So I use Fessler described. And this time, I'm going to say Fessler defined. And I'm going to elaborate first because I want to set up my quote so it makes sense. Complex failures. So the second kind of a failure the article talked about were complex failures. So first were preventable, now complex. Next, Fessler defined complex failures as mistakes that can teach people a great deal. And those are my own words, so I'm not taking a quote because to elaborate, I have to take the information and make it my own. So what I have here so far is I have my transition, because I use next, and I have my elaborations. I'm setting up my quote. Now we said we were going to take something from paragraph 12. So here we go. Was it 12 or is it 10? Ah, 10. I jumped a section. So it's paragraph 10. So we're going to say in paragraph 10. Comma. She offered, because I want to keep using different verbs. And I just took them, to be honest. I took these ideas from the number 2 in your notes section of your IVF summary statement. So here we are. Next, she offered, here's the quote, quote marks, complex failures. Can also be understood. As unavoidable failures, comma, which makes it difficult to assign responsibility for them. Period. And the quote. So there's our second piece of evidence. So I'm just gonna cross that off, and I cited it correctly because I said in paragraph 10. So jot that down. I need my last one. So I'm gonna use finally. Finally. The author's name is Fessler. Fessler explored. So I have described, defined, explored. So I have different verbs because I'm thinking about my sentences all the time. Fessler explored intellectual flavors. Intellectual failures because they require experimentation. So again, I use my own words, and I just took parts of it, and I use my own words because really the key for the final failure, intellectual, is that it's all about experimenting, kind of trial and error, and that you'll learn something as you go. So we need a quote in paragraph 12. Comma. So in paragraph 12, she responded. So I have she said, she offered, and now she responded, comma, start that quote, often, capital O, comma, these failures occur when we're working in areas in which we lack expertise. Comma, or in areas that are uncharted. In a broad industry wide sense. And the quote and punctuation. So we have this. So what I've taken care of is that transition. I elaborated. I did evidence. I cited it correctly. So I should get a 15 out of 15. So when you have this done, you're going to put this back in the binder. We're going to do one more thing with it tomorrow. I want you to grab your book, and I want you to get ready for the next steps. Thanks.